History laid the foundation
that informs our conversation. Welcome to the classroom.
From the church to the streets, and even in the suites, and all around the world. I'm gonna keep it real in the classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom.
Good afternoon and welcome back to another edition of Fannie Lou's Classroom. We appreciate you stopping in, dropping by. So listen, if you're watching and you know someone else needs to tune in on today, make sure you share this YouTube channel. Make sure you post about this. Make sure you are following us also on Instagram and on Facebook. We certainly appreciate your support, and we're hoping that today and during this lunch hour, you will enjoy a different kind of food and nutrition for your body that will help you to move a little bit further along your life journey. And as always, I have to kick off the podcast by thanking those that make it happen every week from week to week. And that is, of course, we'll start with Brooke Mosley, who is our engineer, who makes sure everything goes smoothly. We look good on screen, and our sound is always up to par. And then, of course, Cheryl Prelow, who manages all of our guests and everything else related to Fannie Lou's Classroom. We certainly appreciate all that she does. And we want to remind you that there are many ways you can support us. One is just simply sharing our content and making sure you invite people to join our YouTube channel. But also, you can purchase your own Fannie Lou Classroom t-shirt. And you can do that if you're watching on your phone. You go to friendshipwest.org/social-justice, and you'll see a tab where you can order your Fannie Lou Classroom t-shirt. We can mail that to you. Or if you're watching on your computer, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you directly to the link where you can purchase your very own Fannie Lou Classroom t-shirt. Just helps us to be able to bring in amazing guests like we've had in the past and like we have on today that you will meet in a matter of moments. And it just helps us to keep this podcast going and doing what we feel is impactful ministry, where we can have extended conversations from a Sunday morning, from a Wednesday night, to talk about these various intersections of race, theology, and for me, gender, right? That we have these conversations around. So welcome to the classroom on this Thursday. And without further ado, let me introduce you to our amazing guest and a dear sister of mine, Deirdra Reed. Deirdra is a 25-year veteran of community organizing and has spent over a decade in national campaign organizing. Deirdra has worked with communities across the country on issues of education, poverty and economic justice, criminal justice reform, healthcare, immigration reform. A lot of what you see us doing here at Friendship West is many amazing people around this country doing the same thing, the work of justice. So we already want to shout her out just for that, doing all these multiple movements. She has worked with the Industrial Areas Foundation, the Center for Community Change, as a senior organizer, as well as TNTP, where she served as the Policy and Advocacy Partner. Honored as a Change Champion and Tennessee NAACP Image Awards nominee for social justice. Committed to the power building and liberation of Black people, she serves on the board of directors for the Black Church Center for Justice and Equality and the Multi-Faith Initiative to End Mass Incarceration. She is the national campaign strategist for the Progressive National Baptist Convention's Social Action Commission. Her passion for this work is summed up in a quote by our beloved ancestor, Mother Septima Clark. I have been oppressed, and so I'm always going to have a vote for the oppressed. Deirdra currently leads RISE as the chief dreamer and disruptor, which works on issues of education and dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline. I've only read a small snippet of Deirdre's bio. You can click in the description link and get her full bio. But as you can see, she's not true to it. She's new to it. And as you can see, she's about the survival, not just survival, but the thriving of Black people. And I love her for that. So let's welcome my sister, Deirdra Reed, to Fannie Lou's Classroom.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I feel like, we grew up in Black church. So I'm like, first giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. and to our pastor, the Reverend Doctor Frederick Douglass Haynes. You get what I'm saying? Like I'm
Right.
so excited to be here. I'm so excited. Happy Black History Month.
Yes.
And Black History 365. And I can't wait to just get into this conversation with you.
Good, good. Then I want to first start off because something you told me, and I met you when I read your bio afresh. I said, "Oh, I met you at Center for Community Change. I believe that's where we met, right?" Yes, yes.
Yes.
So, Deirdra and I've been bouncing back and forth with each other for years, and we reconnected. I would say when you all held your conference here last summer. I guess it was late summer when you came to Friendship West. But here's where I want to start because I think this also beyond your bio, right? I always say people are more than what we read in their bios. And like I said about a lot of my guests, I think I'll say this about you, right? I think you're just a genuine good human being, right? Who you've been consistent, right? And courageous and committed the whole time I've known you. And so I always like to tell folks, those are real people that I like to connect with, right? You just, when I met you again, it's like it's kind of that thing when you haven't seen anybody for years and when you connect, it's like you just pick up where you left off. That's how we are, right?
Right.
And I think that contributes to you being, genuine, committed, courageous, and committed to this movement. So thank you for that. But I want to start this because I think this kind of gives people insight to how you see yourself and the work that you do. Tell them what you call yourself. Because when you told me, I was like, you know what? Okay, and Cheryl's going to be able to appreciate this too.
I started out in community organizing with the Industrial Areas Foundation. I got to tell the backstory. The Industrial Areas Foundation, the IAF, which promotes you compartmentalizing yourself, that you are a public person first, right? So don't worry about your gender, your ethnicity, anything. Like all you are a part of the democracy, and you come into this work kind of sanitized. And so community, because I came into community organizing like that, it was about just building power. And so it's like we gotta work. If you want to upend, oppressive systems, you've got to build enough power. And you build enough power, then you can overturn power, right? And that is not, first of all, it's not the way in which I come into this work. Like I come into this work in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to say, I came in to build beloved community. This is about making sure that my community is healed and whole. And so when I started looking at it, I said, so who am I? You know what I mean? Like I'm not a child of the movement anymore, little seasoned. I'm also not an elder of the movement just yet. I'm looking forward to becoming an elder and just get to sit back and just say, all the old stories. But right now I am a doula of the movement. I am helping to give birth to all the movement building things that are happening. And so when I looked at what a doula, and especially an African-centered midwife / doula does, they do not start just, it's not like a nurse, and no shade to nurses, right? But it's not just like a nurse where you're just there to deliver the baby. It's like you're there throughout the entire process. You're there when the couple says, I want to get pregnant. So I come in when people say, I want to movement build. And I'm asking the right, I'm trying to ask the questions. I'm trying to make sure, like, are you really, are you really ready for this work? I can ask those questions. And then for me right now, especially given the political climate that we're in, we're birthing this movement. And so I'm just here to say, push, push.
Thank you. I just think that's important, right? Because I think it kind of lends itself to the title of the podcast, right? Finding your vibe and your tribe, right? So you found that, right? And you've named that. And I think more importantly, I wanted you to give that story and talk about it because it's give people the freedom to name who they are and how they show up for themselves, right? So I think...
Yeah.
Did you want to say some more about that?
Just the other part for me about the naming is that, like historically, especially as it relates to oppressed people and very specifically to Black folks in this country who came through the enslavement of African people, is like we were stripped from the ability to name ourselves, which is a very real tool of the oppressor. The oppressor says that I'm going to have you to be named something that feels good to the oppressor, right? So that's why I love good poor people. Good poor people will say, don't call me by my government name. Like, they get it. Like, they get like, oh, I have a name that you know me by. My name is Beanie. I'm Pookie. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a name that the people who love you know you by.
Right.
Right. And then there's also the name that is given, that whether it's about, assimilating into the oppressive culture, etc. And so I know my name. Like, I know how I was named. My mother named me Deirdra, which means sorrow. My grandfather named me after his favorite cousin Marie, and that means the Queen of Sorrow. And so for me, I had to embrace the fact that two people that I love dearly, unbeknownst to them, but I feel known by my ancestors, named me very clearly that I was going to understand the sorrow of the people. And so I've embraced that. And then what I've done is Akatunde, that's what I feel, which is been able to transform that sorrow into joy, or to be able to help to do that through movement building.
Nice. Yes. So that's just important. So because kind of what we want to talk about is that you first have to, and we're kind of carrying over from last week's conversation where we talked about, Sankofa meets a Kairos moment, where we're saying, well, what lessons are we learning from the past, and what do people do with that if they're not sure where they're even going? So thank you for that, because I want people to kind of see that finding that it's a personal process, but you also do it in community, right? Yes. As you do that. So I want to kick off with this question, and it looks like Cheryl and I had some similar ideas around this first question, because I think you can be very helpful and useful. As I would think people are still looking at news and thinking this is not real, right? Because there's so much coming at us at one time. And just the imagery, right, of the president sitting at his desk, but Elon Musk doing the talking, right? With a toddler, right? And so Cheryl was doing something, she sometimes giving me cues, and I didn't know she was giving me a cue. So democracy, right, in and of itself thrives on participation, plurality, and collaboration, right? Because this is should be a multiracial democracy. It means we're a plural society, right? We're not just one type of people, one type of faith, one type of ethnic group. So in light of this current social, political realities that we're dealing with very real time, what would you say are some of the ways we need to start thinking about organizing effectively, efficiently, in ways that makes this sustainable? Because, right, so as a doula, as you said, it's before you even conceive, it's while you are carrying, and it's also after you have given birth. That child has to be sustained, and so do you beyond the moment. So can you just talk to us a little bit about, in general, what we might need to be thinking about by way of organizing for long term?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there's a couple things that we should have said. So this is my friend. And as friends, what we will do is I'll say, I see you. I'm not a poker player, but I'll say, I see you consciously. And I raise your consciousness. So I'm going to do it.
That's what you do.
See the question and I raise you. The beauty to me of birthing a movement, to your point, is that it's not stagnant. It's always growing. So if we, I do believe that as relates to not just Black Lives Matter, but like the movement for Black lives, in this very conscious way in which the community has started to grapple both internally to Black and brown folks, right? But then also externally in the world with anti-Black racism. And so we didn't have those, think about this, in 1980, 1970s, we talked about racism, and we talked about being Black and proud, but we didn't necessarily say it like this, like, oh, this is our strategy around anti-Black racism and white supremacy. So we're growing, this baby is growing. And what we need right now is for people to think about the work of movement and movement building, not as, a John Legend song. I'm just trying to be helpful.
Okay.
Like not like a John Legend song. Like it's not like we're not gonna march for 2.5 minutes to a John Legend song and then everything be okay. This is literally a lifestyle. Like if you're committed to justice seeking, you're going to like this is a which side are you on moment. You've got to say, this is my lifestyle. So if it's your lifestyle, how are you not separating yourself, what you do, who you are from and say like, I'm doing some justice seeking work today. And then you go back to your life because then it feels like you can go back to sleep or you can not engage when you don't feel like engaging, right? That's where, to your point, with somebody sitting at a seat and somebody talking in the Oval Office, we're at a place where you can no longer say that this is a part of you. It's got to be in you. You got to say, this is what I'm going to do. And so, Deirdra, what does that look like? What that looks like is wherever you sit, from your job to your community, you don't have to, I don't want it to feel like heavy, like, oh, now I have to be sister soldier and I have to always fight. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I want you to hear is like, you need to see yourself as a part of the movement, and that your existence, your very breath is resistance. Your being is resistance. Where you shop or choose not to shop is resistance. And not for just a day, but for the way in which you carry out your life. And I feel like if we could start there, then we can start to calm this false sense of a moment and see it as a sustained movement. Does that make sense?
It makes perfectly good sense. And one of the things we were teaching a session, well, actually a class this week at the church during our Howard Thurman Bible Institute. And I facilitated a session, God, Faith, and Public Life, right? And so part of that conversation had to be around how we even define justice, right? And from a biblical standpoint, going to Micah 6:8, when the prophet says, do justice, and we pause right there. Well, what does that mean? Right? And so it's breaking down that, first of all, it means you need to have a right relationship with yourself, right? It's how do you understand yourself, your being, and who God has called you to be. And sometimes that means we have to pull back and not be in movements until you fully understand who you are and recover that. Because depending on your social orientation, depending on how you were socialized, depending on family systems you may have been born into, etc., you have to kind of detox and be able to heal from some traumas you may have that prevents you from knowing what your God-given gifts are, right? And to recover those and nurture those and then move into movement building spaces. So first, it's just right relationship with self, which then should allow us to have right relationships with one another, right? Are you being just in how you deal with people every day? And then obviously the third level for me is then how do you have right relationship with these systems and institutions that are undergirded, that were birthed, nurtured, nourished, and undergirded by white domination, right? And so for me, justice is those three levels, which simply means, though, for how I see it, do you live a just life? Because to your point about I'm going to do this today, pick it up day, lay it down tomorrow. So that's why I think it's a process that we have to give attention to, so that you're not just doing justice. You don't do justice. You are that. You live a just life.
Justice.
That then informs
Yes.
how you do everything else, and how you, more importantly, how you see and understand. Right.
And that's the true power of it, though. And that's where like when I go back to like my IAF training, on like power, the thing about white supremacy is that, and white privilege, is that you're steeped and you're nurtured in this idea that you innately have power.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if something was happening today on your street, what would you do? You know what I'm saying? And like I've talked to, nice white allies, you know what I'm saying? I've got white friends. Like I talk to my white friends and white allies, and their very first thing is like, oh, I'm gonna call the mayor. Because in their mind, You get what I'm saying? Like
Right.
they are a part of the democracy, a citizen, they have rights. Like all of those things are just embedded in the way that they were naturally um assimilated into the culture, right? And so for Black folks and oppressed folks, even if we called the, tried to call the mayor, we might not have been successful. And so we've learned through our culture that we are powerless. And so we've got to start to shift that, to your point. We've got to start to shift and say, like, how do I, one, fully gain, see myself as being, in and of myself, having power, having, agency for myself. And then as I, to your point, the second thing I'm going to say about that is, like, what are my gifts and what are my natural gifts and talents? Because I do believe that about God. God is not asking everybody to be Martin Luther King Jr. Jr. They're not asking
Right.
everybody to be a spokesperson. Everybody, like the body is real. Like you have natural gifts and talents that you can lend to the movement. What are those? And do that. That's your role. That's first and foremost. And then second, when you see injustice, how do you deal with it, both on an individual level and then also on a on a collective level.
Right.
And that to me is the Underground Railroad. Like, we need our modern day. We need to claim, we have one, but we need to claim our Underground Railroad for everything that you're doing, whether you are frying chicken for the, what did you call your meeting that you have at the church?
Which one?
The one that you just talked about.
the Howard Thurman Bible Institute.
Yes.
Yes.
So if there's food at that and someone brings the food, that's equally as important as a duty for movement building. I prepared the food. I helped with the, I helped with the mics. I helped, there's all these different roles. And so we are playing our roles, but we consciously see our roles as a part of movement building. Then we're building that underground, like we're building that Underground Railroad as we fight oppressive systems and the policies, but we also have created a place for folks to find sanctuary and support on the ground. And I feel like that's the thing that we as, especially as Black folks, that we've got to reclaim for ourselves.
For sure. Cheryl wanted to say something.
Yeah, so I want to make a comment and then I have a question, only because you brought it up, because I know it's like kind of later, but the statement that I wanted to make was like, how do you were talking about how as an individual you are a part of the resistance. So it just reminded me of my daughters, who I love to talk about, that that they had to do a thing for school, and they needed to purchase some canned food. And so they were like, Mom, where should we go, since we're not, going to XYZ, Walmart or Target, some of the favorite places I used to shop. And so one part of me, I was just proud because they are paying attention and they understand that if we're not seen as equal, valued, then you're not getting my money. That enriches you, because it doesn't enrich me. It just gives me what I need for that particular day, but it enriches someone else. So they see themselves as part of the resistance, and what little they can do what they can do as, almost 18-year-old young girls, young women. So that statement. And then when you were talking about, God is not asking all of us to be a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One of the questions that I had posed was like, how do we identify our own human capital capacity that we have and leverage that so that we can we will be far more impactful and actually be able to sustain this movement. So it may be a little out of order of the conversation, but since you brought it up, I just want to go ahead and ask that question or talk about that.
He asked me. No, I mean, I think that's it. I think, and a part of it, I don't want to romanticize it in ways that are not helpful, because I also do know that when you're in crisis, when you're living in an oppressive system in crisis, to ask someone to take a moment and say, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, stop running. It's an African proverb, right? It's like, you can't just run. Like, you've got to take a moment and just reflect and say, what are the things that I do well? And then how can I lend those things to the movement, right? And I just think that that's what we've got to do. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's just like, you've got to be able to take that self-assessment and say, you know, and to know that it's all valuable. So
Right.
I do make good macaroni and cheese. I decorate well. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that I know that I do well, that I enjoy doing. How can I find spaces that need what I do and
Right.
do, you know, liberatory spaces that need what I do and do it. And then for us as movement builders, we've got to tell a different story about what people do and say that contributed to
Yes.
the building of movement. I feel like, you know, there's a question about, like, do people know their gifts and talents? They do. Do we value them beyond the speaker? We don't. We don't value the lady that's in the fellowship hall that's going around wiping off the tables. You understand what I'm saying? But without the tables being clean to prepare the space for us to have the conversation, it may or may not go as well as it could have gone without her presence there. And so we've got to learn how to tell that story, that every part of what people contribute is valuable to the building of movement, and build that as a part of our culture.
So I want to say two things, or maybe more, about that, right? To your point, I definitely think we should do a much better job at naming when we say, oh, so-and-so provided this today, and this fuels the movement this way. Like, being very intentional about naming it and connecting those dots, because what we have a tendency to do, particularly in church, right? We certainly have a hierarchy on who gives the most value to what we're doing. Right. We may say, well, so-and-so works in this area, so we're going to pray for them because they got a lot going on. Well, now, okay. But this other area is just as much. It's just a different going on. Right. And so I think that's something we have to do just fundamentally when it comes to church, period. How we see ministry and how we either consciously or subconsciously elevate one ministry over another, giving it more value, that what you're doing is more impactful. It's they don't say it in these words, it's more important, but you'll say things like, oh, we're going to definitely pray for you because we know you really got to handle that. It's a different kind of work that you do. And in some ways diminish what another person, well, yours is not, but he got to do this, you got to do that. It's not just the same. Well, you don't know that, right? Because you don't know what's over here. So I think we have to do a better job in general of honoring what everybody brings to the table and the ways in which we all serve in ministry. That's one. Number two, to your point, when I finally discovered Georgia Gilmore, to your point, how without her, there would be no 381 days of standoff buses, right? Because she created, using her innovation and creativity, called the club to nowhere, right? So white folks said, where you get that money from? Nowhere, right? Like, she's not lying. She's like, it came from nowhere. But all those chicken dinners she fixed, them meatloaf plates, all that paid for gas, paid for car insurance. So to your, like, why aren't we telling that story as we talk about King, as we talk about an Abernathy or James Lawson? You know, how do we do that, right? And to your point, I think we have to do better about, we can correct that in this movement, in this particular era that we're continuing the trajectory of really fighting for freedom, peace, love, and liberation. It's, as Angela Davis says, it's an ongoing struggle. Like, freedom is a constant struggle in her, to use her language. How do we correct that? And I think that's what you're bringing out. Like, we have to be able to say that.
We've got to correct it, and we've got to correct the idea again. And I know, listen, I don't know if anybody know John Legend. This is not shade to John Legend. I absolutely adore John Legend and the John Legend, the freedom songs. That's not my point. My point is that we've allowed for the narrative about what the story that's told about movement building and community building to be told in ways that are destructive for the ongoing fight for liberation.
Right.
It's, Like, I don't know. Listen, I'm talking to our friends. We're not gonna talk about the Super Bowl. We're not gonna talk about the halftime.
We got more to go.
Super Bowl halftime,
You can start. We can go there.
You don't get a 1st and 10. You don't get a first touchdown. Get the touchdown, and then everybody do a little dance, and then we go home. No, the game is being played. You don't stop playing the game after a touchdown.
Right.
And for some reason, as an analogy for Black folks and the civil rights, like our quest for freedom and liberation, we allowed for a great touchdown, which was the civil rights movement. I mean, it was epic. It was, it was everything. They went from side to side. It was great. But we're replaying that as if that's the full game. That was a touchdown. It was a point in the game. And so when now that they've introduced Project 2025, everybody's in an uproar. And it was like, friend, I love you. You've got a glimpse at your opponent's playbook. Got it. Did you think that the game was over? Masking. It's not. But, and I love it in the Kenyan sense of it, it's like, but we have our own playbook. And our playbook, radical truth telling. Our playbook, radical community engagement. Right? Our playbook, that's Audre Lorde. It's like these tools for the master's tools are going to get us so far. Voting is going to get us so far.
Right.
So far, right? The tools of our master will get us so far, but they are not our only tools. And so we've got to get back to our tools. We've got to get back to we're talking, our spirituality. We've got to get back to praying with our feet. We've got to get back to counting what we do in community as a part of movement building. Like, we've got a playbook. We just got to get back to our playbook, and then teach our children how to continue to go on. And I don't know, like, I'm preaching now, but like, I just feel like that's, if we're missing anything right now, it's that part. It's this idea that we've won, we commemorated, and that we are kind of holding the line versus it being that this is a constant, this is and will be a constant in the lives of Black folks. Anti-Blackness will be constant in our lives here, right? We're not in a post-racial society. And so how do we, not breed fear in our children, not breed nurture them into a place of inferiority, but how do we realistically pass the mantle? You know what I mean? Like, prepare them for the beautiful struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, go ahead, Cheryl, just go on. We informal around here. There's something going on with the computer. So no, I think that's so important, right? And I think, to your point, what we had a tendency, and this kind of goes back to when Dr. Eddie Glaude wrote his article, "Is the Black Church Dead?" Right? And people were like, what? No, it's not that. But part of what he was saying, right, was that we live off of what the Black church did. And we stayed there. So it's more like we're always doing a look back, and we have not carried out that. Of course, you got, churches that do, but the vast majority of churches do not carry that legacy of the big B, big C Black church. Right. And I think, to your point about the movement, I think it becomes iconic. So we look at more as an icon, right, that is frozen in time. And had we not done that, we would have seen that as soon as they gave you the rights, they were already planning on how to take them back. Yeah. Right. So to your point, we got a glimpse in the playbook, but the reality is the playbook has been there the whole time.
Absolutely.
Right.
This is not Project 2025.
Right.
Project 2024, 2012.
16, 19.
You know what I mean? 1971.
Really,
right.
Just
1864.
Right.
1619.
You see what I'm saying?
The frequent ain't changed.
It has not. And so I think that's where we cannot get, and I think it's where we've been caught slipping. We live off of what has been and not understanding the real game that's being played. And if you understand white domination, it all makes sense. And I think it was maybe it was Frances Cress Welsing, ancestor Frances Cress Welsing, or I can't remember exactly who. I have to look it up and correct it if I have if I'm sourcing the wrong person. But I think she said something like, if you don't understand the function and role of white supremacy, everything else is going to confuse you. You see what I'm saying? And that's it.
It's like a ghost. That's I can't think, but yeah, it's like a ghost. Racism and white supremacy feels like a ghost. You know, something is pushing you. You know it's there, but you don't know what it is, and until you narrow in and say this is what it is,
right?
Then what it's like that aha moment. That's Naeem Akbar, the psychology of Black folk.
Right,
it's like
right.
first you're unaware, you know you're being pushed, but you don't know. Then you become aware, and then it breeds anger. Then you're angry. You got to push past anger into strategy and into like self-actualization, where you say, I fully understand, and almost empathy for the oppressor. You know what I mean? Like, I fully understand that you feel like you need to oppress me, but I fully stand in my humanity,
right,
and say no.
And part of that is not only standing your own humanity, but it's no longer trying to prove that you are human, but it's turning that around and asking the question, what is it about you that makes you so inhumane that you feel you have to dominate, dehumanize, right? And try your best to crush the very soul of people, right? So, so let me move to this, because I think this is something else I wanted to talk about, because I feel like it's happening to a lot of people, which is why I wanted to kind of channel the conversation, say, okay, pause, understand what is it you are called to in this moment, in this Kairos moment. Where do you feel you're being called to? And then connecting to something. So when you think about January 20th, we're not even 30 days in. This is just February, 13th. We haven't even reached 30 days. So you think about January 20th just to today. We have been subjected to, what Dr. Juan Floyd Thomas said this past Sunday, flurries of executive disorders by the sitting president, right? And what I feel what has happened and again, the function of white supremacy. I think Dr. Haynes quoted, I want to say it was Toni Morrison who said the function of white supremacy is to distract you from doing the work. And I would add the function of it is also to strike fear and terror and anxiety in people. Mm-hmm. And I think this constant flurry of stuff, everything we're reading, just people constantly tweeting and doing their best, not subliminal messages, but blatantly saying, we are here to destroy, right? We are here to other, and if you're other, we're going to make sure you feel it completely. Even if what I'm saying and putting forth can't even be done. It's not even a matter of it can't be done. It's the fact that I'm showing you I have power to do this if I want to, right? And I tell people in Texas, we need to, we always got to buckle down in Texas just because of who our legislator is, our Texas ledge is, but we got to get prepared, because what we see happen at the White House, we're getting ready to see it out of our session that's already in play, right? It's going to be thousands of bills have been filed. A lot of them are very much extreme to the right. It may never make committee, but that's not the point. The point is I'm showing you how far I'm willing to go. And all that's happening now, they're testing limits. What all can we really get away with before the populace decides not today, right? And so that, to your point, that's why we have to have constant resistance, but you can only do that and sustain that when you know who you are, and I'm be Baba whose you are, right? And connect to people who can nurture, nourish, protect, affirm, and love you in that process, right? So I was asking that question. Let me get to my question. So distractions, right? How can we really avoid this onslaught of really distractions that can take us away from the real work that needs to be done, right? So how can we kind of help manage the distractions, but also the fear and anxiety that may be rising up, because we see this every day. Then we turn around, we see this. So then we're scattered, right? So we're not focused. So how can we do that? And I think let's do that first. Let's kind of talk about that first.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, we've got to hold the healthy tension of both. Like I saw this, I'm not really on social media, but I saw this really beautiful picture like it was a drawing of like all these black women sitting on the top of these buildings. I don't know if you saw it. And they
Yes,
have like
yes.
the little tea and they drinking and they like watching everything
Burn.
right, burn up. And I was like, if that could be true. Like if it was really true that we can watch all, like we
Yeah.
can sit somewhere in an ivory tower that is not going to get hit by any of these,
Right.
bombs that they're dropping, and then just watch what's happening politically. We're not going to be able to do that. And so the question, that's why I love your question. The question to me is, how do you settle in for this long winter's nap? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, how do you settle in to the chaos
That's right.
without the chaos overtaking you?
Yes.
And that's the answer. Like one, I love y'all. Get off of social media. I love you so much. Getting you some hush harbor spaces. Like the title of this is How to Find Your Vibe and Tribe. And what I wanted to posit to people is you already have a tribe. The question is, can you redirect the vibe of that tribe? So do I want you, like, we're forming some things online. You know what I mean? Like we have some things that are coming up. You can meet us in Selma. We're going to start Freedom Fridays as a virtual kickback, right? So there's going to be things that are coming down the pike where you can connect to like-minded people around justice-seeking work to stay connected, for sure. But the beauty, I feel, of having a sovereign God is that you have a tribe. You got a girls group, y'all brunch. Oh, y'all get so pretty. I done seen you on Facebook. I done seen y'all all dressed in red and, for Galentine's, and y'all going to brunch. And that's your tribe. You already have one. The question is, can you and that tribe agree to stop compartmentalizing yourselves and saying that I can be glammed here and justice here? Can you say for 15 minutes, we still gonna glam and we still gonna brunch, but for 15 minutes, we're gonna have a conversation at the top of this hour before these mimosas come about the state of politics in my city or in my state and what we need to do. We just need to repurpose what we already have. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I think repurpose, and then it's also the case in some people's case, it is finding a tribe because they may feel isolated, right? Or it could be, I know I want to do this, but the people I'm with, because you also got to be also honest about, do I need to stay in this tribe? There you go.
Yes. I mean, that's where we are. Like, I ain't been at it as a movement doula. That, like, if you have a tribe and your tribe can see what's happening in the country and still not want to engage, and that we need to be engaging. Yeah. Now it's time to go find a new tribe. Like, now, come on
with us, right?
come on. We'll help you find a tribe. But what I'm hoping is, you know what I'm saying? Again, with the sovereign God, I'm hoping that all of these things that we've been forming, all of these social networks that we've been forming can rise to the moment, right?
Yes.
And be able to say, like, hey, again, this isn't how we originated, but we're here. Because think about when you have a tribe, you got to build trust, check, that's already there. You got to build relationship, check, that's already there. You know what I mean? And so is there an honest, courageous conversation that you could have with your existing tribes, your family, your friend group, etc., your sorority, your fraternity, right? Is there a courageous conversation that you can have about the political moment and how you need to collectively make space to engage? And if the answer is no, I'm gonna go straight New Testament on you. Then you need to dust your feet off. You need to dust those sandals, and you need to walk in a different direction.
Walk in a different direction. And
walk in a different direction. He gave us a word about what that looks like. He said, go and tell them the truth. Go 2 by 2 and tell them the truth.
That's it.
And if they accept, let's get to work. If they don't accept, dust them sandals and keep moving. We in the movement building moment,
That's yeah, for sure. Now you know my favorite one. I love to tell people, "May the Lord watch between me and thee," and it's in love. That's the other thing, right? And we gotta also understand, me leaving you is not that I don't love you, right? And so that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother
but I like
podcast.
it, though.
But that's a whole nother podcast. We'll come back to that another day. But I think it's also, for me, it's also us being honest in the moment too, right? We can't make pretend like what we're seeing is not happening. And so, someone made a comment. They said, "Whatever it is, God is in control. I'm not worried about it." Now, listen here. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season," and the reality is, we're in a season of destruction right now. And that's not saying God is not in control and that God is not present, but that's saying that's the reality. We have a real existential crisis on our hands, right? And it's real.
And I do believe, like, and that's we are the church, and so I've been asking for some forgiveness about this as well. It's like, how we love to thump a Bible here. God is in control. Give me that scripture. Just go and take it to me. You know what I mean? But there are so many. Our Bible is full of stories around what it means to be oppressed by a government system.
That's right.
And what is our response to it? Let's go to Esther. Let's go. Do you get what I'm saying? Like let's go to Malachi. Like you can go to any of the major prophets. These are stories about the fact that, hey, someone has come in to rule over, not rule with. This is what they've done to the people.
Right.
And God is on the side of the people, and he will give it. We pray and we get divine strategy, and then we act on that divine strategy. And so how we get back again to our playbook, where we don't rest on the laurels of a Bible that isn't liberatory, that isn't about freedom.
Right, as Nikki Giovanni would say, Sonia Sanchez, if you bring something to me, how do it free us? If it don't, we gotta throw it away, lay it to the side. It's not for this. And it's being able to distinguish that, right? So I guess that's another question we can ask, right? Also, how do we distinguish what is relevant, what is useful? So
for me, I feel like let me go back and say one little thing I do want to say about your tribe. Okay. For your tribe, every tribe. So in community organizing, we have what they call a ladder of engagement. A ladder of engagement means that think about like the rungs of a ladder or like the stair steps. Everybody is not going to be on the highest step, like just the most radical, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you start on a smaller rung where y'all start reading some books, you know what I mean? Like well-read books or let's read about justice. Let's start to reason together so that we can figure out how to act together. Now, as a way to start to get your tribe involved in justice seeking and liberation work. So that I just wanted to posit that. I didn't want to forget about that. Now go back to your question. You said what?
I was saying, so what is useful? What is relevant?
Yeah. So I think
how do we distinguish?
Right. Yeah. I think that there's a couple ways to get at that. So one is I do think that Black people, we need to have our Black people meeting. We need to get together and say, what are the things that we think are worth collectively fighting for? We know that voting rights is foundational, that every issue is a voting rights issue. So we need to stay diligent on making sure that we're making sure that the access to the ballot box is real for Black and brown folks, right? So I feel like that's a heartbeat. Like that's something we've got to continue to do. I also think that individually, you know what you care about. Like, what do you care about? Because all of these issues, like sadly to say, we don't have necessarily a multi-issue platform.
Right.
Folks have kind of huddled in different, issue-based tribes. So if you are a Black woman and Black maternal health is the issue that you care the most about, or like health care and Black maternal health, then find folks who are doing work on the state or on the national level on the issue, and you get with those folks because they have, and look at their plan to see if it's something that you're willing to fight for. For me, I believe that the prison industrial complex and the carceral state is right up there with like tied and tethered to citizenship and voting rights, the ability to have slavery by another name. So for me, I spent a lot of time on dismantling the school to prison pipeline, and then also trying to eliminate mass incarceration. So you need to say for yourself, hey, where do I want, what is the issue that's impacting me in my life? What do I feel passionate about? And let me start to seek out people who are also passionate about that and join their fight. Now, the thing I think that we need to do, again, because we don't have necessarily a multi-issue platform as Black folks, is that we need to, as organizers, we need to do a better job of weaving all of those issue-based like individual issues into a more sustainable umbrella of a platform for Black folks, and to tell the story of it in that way. And so I think about the work that you and I, Reverend Ayers, have started, are continuing with this statement of common purpose that came out during King Weekend, of naming the ways in which Black folks have been oppressed in this country, and starting to not quite have a Bill of Rights around them, but starting to say, hey, this is how we see our faith connected to these issues across a gamut of issues.
Right, for sure. So let's kind of, I want to kind of come to a close with this, because you mentioned some of the work that we started King Weekend. We have some real ongoing ways for people to connect with us, right? So I'm gonna have you talk about some of those, and I want to start with Selma 60, because that was one of our co-sponsors for the King Weekend, and so we have a couple of flyers we also want to show to people. So this first one is Selma Jubilee Weekend anniversary, the 60th anniversary, right? And I see our dear friend Brother Willie, certainly Bishop Vashti McKenzie, and it's going to be in the place. So you want to talk to us about how people can either connect with this 60th anniversary, Selma Jubilee Weekend anniversary, and meetings at the bridge and what we have planned. So I'm going to let you talk about that weekend.
For sure. So I really want to start like at the beginning. So, and hopefully some of the folks on this, on this podcast were a part of it. And I think all of this is available by video, so you can connect to it. So the Black Church Center for Justice and Equality, the Multi-Faith Initiative to End Mass Incarceration, Friendship West, Historic Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, and the Progressive National Baptist Convention, and Faith for Black Lives all came together right before the election and started to do some strategic scenario planning about like what happened, what's going to happen, with either, candidate, what would we want to see as a amalgamation of organizations that represent Black church. And we woke up after the election, we had planned 2 weeks, 2 weeks before, saying like, oh, we'll have so much time because, this is going to be a contested race and all this. And we woke up the next day and they're like, oh yeah, Trump won. And so we ended up going into a post-election analysis and prayer vigil a week after the election. All of these organizations came together. We did that virtually. We left out of that and said the next thing we want to do together is to participate in Friendship West King Weekend teach-in. And so we had over 7 cities to have at least one anchor congregation that led a teach-in in their city. Coming out of that, we said, hey, we did a teach-in weekend for King that was like a half day on a Saturday or a Sunday. We need to go deeper and start to really do some strategy work as well as some organizing. And so the two places that's going to happen over the next 6 weeks. One is we're starting some virtual Freedom and Liberation Fridays, just a lunch kickback that you can join virtually. And that will start March the 7th. And then we're asking people if you have, the time and opportunity to come and do some organizing training and some strategic thinking about our answer to Project 2025, our progressive answer to Project 2025 in Selma, Alabama during the 60th anniversary of Selma. And so that's happening March the 6th through the 9th in Selma, Alabama. We have, to me, it's going to be a beautiful weekend. We have, preaching hours for folks who want to hear from, the prophetic words, of some of our ministers, our social justice ministers. So Bishop Vashti McKenzie is going to open up with a mass meeting on Thursday night. Reverend Dr. Peoples, who is the president of Progressive National Baptist Convention, is convening Black ministers on Saturday to say what is the Black church's response to Project 2025. And they're going to have a strategic afternoon together in Selma. And then finally, Reverend Dr. Francois will end the preaching, like he will preach us over the bridge on Sunday morning. So that's the preaching. But then throughout Saturday, we'll have all kinds of workshops that are going to be supported by grassroots community organizations that have active campaigns. And so again, if your issue is Black agriculture, we've got organizers that are coming to talk about the state of Black agriculture. What are the policies that are coming down the pike or not? What do we need to fight for? Economic justice, mass incarceration, education, and healthcare. So there's going to be ample time for us to talk together about this kind of collective platform, and then individually about the things that you care about.
Yes. So in plenty. And so we have other things we're going to have planned too, right? Ongoing, not just this year, but I wanted you to be able to really lay out at least these two specific ways that people can. And then the third one, right, is also the ways in which we've been promoting this on the show, that people can still be engaged in a 365 nonviolent training, because we're in partnership with the King Center out of Atlanta. So that's also another training that people can go to. Because again, as we said, everybody needs to know where they feel comfortable and where they feel that they can be most beneficial with movement building. So thank you for laying that out so nicely and brilliantly. People know how to connect. If that's what they want to do, you're looking for a place to land, we're a great place to land. We will love you, affirm you, tell you the truth, grow you, and be in community with you. So thank you, Deirdra, for this really good and really encouraging conversation, but also very informative, that I felt could give people some real tools and direction, right? Understand the moment we're in, and then what is our obligation, and that none of us can afford to sit this out. And it's just finding and discovering what can you do and what do you do well. If that's cooking, do that, right? If it's researching, do that. If it's writing, articles, do that. Editorials do that. If it's taking the pictures, videography, video, being a videographer, capturing the movement, do that. The main thing is do whatever it is you're called to do, because we need all of it to sustain this movement. So we want to thank you for your time today. We appreciate you being with us on today. And so
appreciate you for inviting me. And like I said, I get it. I love when they say, don't be weary in well doing. And I think that if folks can leave with anything, leave with that, is that, the whole, I love when they say, not like love, but when they say, the devil's here to kill, steal, and destroy. It's like the confusion is to keep you confused.
That's
and
right.
To keep you in terror. And so if we can say that on our personal level, you know what I mean? If we was talking about your job, then you done came to church and said, gave a praise report. Girl, they was trying to confuse me on the job, but God be the glory. I did X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's what I want to encourage people to see about this. This is all just smoke and mirrors. It is all just to, it is all to cause think about the Ku Klux Klan. Like, this is all just about a hood. It is about causing fear and terror. And then when you operate out of fear and terror, you're running in every different direction.
That's right.
Versus us saying, you know what? I won't put my eyes on the fear and terror, but what I will put my eyes on is how I can contribute to movement building. It gives you purpose. It builds our movement, and it teaches our young people that this is what you do when they come for you.
Right. So with that, that's a good word to end on. So we want to thank you for being with us on today. Let's give it up for Deirdra Reed, my sister, my friend. And just two quick announcements. Of course, I mentioned earlier in the show, you can support us by buying your Fannie Classroom t-shirt. You can either scan that QR code. You can go directly to friendshipwest.org/social-justice, and we have a link there for you to purchase your own Fannie Classroom t-shirt. And then, of course, we're still asking you to join us for our Faith Days at the Capitol, March 6th through the 18th. If you can't make all 3 days, that's fine. Maybe you can come on Monday, March the 17th, which is a very busy day for us on that day. We'll be doing a lot of work around rallying. We'll be doing work around workshops as well as legislative training. And we'll do legislative drop-ins to drop off our legislative priorities to not only our own elected officials, but also those targeted elected officials that we feel can be possible allies that can carry bills that we feel are the ones that are most life-giving and not death-dealing to our local community. So you can register on Friendship West website. You can also scan this QR code to take you straight to the registration page. Again, if you can be there all 3 days, we'd love to have you. But if you can only be there one day, sign up for Monday, March 17th. We love to have you. We need our DNA, our fingerprints need to be all over the Texas State Capitol this session because they are shaping it up to be one of the most oppressive sessions that we have had. They're looking for more ways to strip us of our voting rights. If you can imagine that from Senate Bill 1 from the last session, they're looking to double down. So we want to make sure that we are present and that we are making our voice heard. And they know that we are not intimidated. We're not fearful. Anxiety is not going to control us. That we're going to try to move the distractions out the way and keep our eyes on what we know we need to keep our eyes on. And that is the work that needs to be done to confront and to resist, but also to liberate ourselves from these oppressive laws that they are trying to implement down at the Texas State Capitol. So join us on Monday, March 17th. If you can't make out 3 days, please make sure you join us on Monday. Thank you for being here on today. We look forward to seeing you again right here at 12 noon in Fannie Lou's classroom.
From the church to the